So I'm going to give an overview of the Tommybuilt T7 that I have. But first, a little history. I don't know Tommy personally. I sent him an SL8 probably 6 or 7 years ago to do a conversion on. From the time I shipped it out to the time I got it back done was a week. He was very communicative. It's worked flawlessly, and it was a great job. So when I started hearing rumors of an MP7 clone coming out, I got pretty excited. I emailed him probably 2 years ago before the rumor was official even, and said, hey, I want to get put on the pre-order list. But then when I saw it at SHOT Show, I got really excited. So I tried to purchase it on the day of the release. I, like many others, got it in my cart, went to check out, and it wasn't available anymore. I looked at a few on the secondhand market. A lot of them were like really expensive. I ended up finding somebody that was interested in selling it. They didn't advertise it yet, but I had a private conversation with them. Made a good deal on it, a fair deal, a really fair deal, especially considering it came with a hard case, about 250 rounds of ammo, the stock, the front grip, the cleaning kit. I mean, it was a really good deal. So purchased it, and I went out to the range, and I had some issues, mostly with failure to eject. It was extracting fine, but maybe every 5 rounds or so it would have a double feed, or it would feed the spent casing back into the chamber, a lot of times reversed, while it's trying to feed the next round. So I immediately reached out to Tommy. He responded within 30 minutes. I think it was on a weekend as well, and said, hey, I can send you a whole new bolt to test. Let me know. In the meantime, I had disassembled it, and I had found that the ejector pin had backed out a little bit and was making contact with the carrier, and that was causing the bolt to get stuck. And I'm sure it was causing a lesser amount of force when the gun would cycle. It was catching on that. So anyway, I replaced it. I filed down and polished down a pin from a 7.62 by 39 AR bolt, the extractor bolt, and pressed it in there. And I told Tommy that, and he goes, hey, I can send you another bolt or another pin if you want. The OEM pin, I can send that to you, as long as I had a way to pin it in there. I said, no, don't worry about it. The pin I had was working. It seemed fine, so didn't need any support further than that. I still had some failure to eject issues though. I found out that several of the roll pins, the roll pin for the spring, the ejector spring had backed out a little bit. I found that the one other roll pin, I can't recall which one it is right now, but it was interfering as well. So I replaced both of those. I had those on hand. Made a significant difference. But then I started having, it was ejecting fine for the most part, but then I started having failure to go in the battery. It would, the bolt carrier would pull forward and wouldn't quite go all the way in. What I ended up finding out was the piston shaft had started to mushroom, and it was catching in both the extended positions, all the way when gas hits it and pushes it all the way out. As it goes all the way to the end, it would catch, and then all the way forward when the bolt hit it, it would start catching. So I think that was leading to some of my failure to eject issues, being that the bolt wasn't being hit with the full force because it was catching at the end of the shaft and wasn't hitting the bolt all the way. And then also when the bolt would go forward, it was hitting on there and catching because the shaft was mushroomed on that end. It's having issues going in. Initially I thought it was when I took the piston apart, I noticed that the rings seemed really worn, and it was hard to get the piston out to begin with. And they seemed very malleable. Like when you'd move them or bend them, they didn't go back with the force I would expect. So I was emailing Tommy about this, and in the meantime, I made some AR, I got some AR rings, and cut them down and reshaped them to fit and put it in the piston. They worked great. Again, got a significant better outcome with failure to ejects not as often, but still going into battery was an issue. And when I had the piston out, I actually polished it down so it wouldn't catch anymore on the shaft. But then it would just reoccur. The next time I went to the range, after about a mag and a half, it would start doing the same thing. So I made my own. I got a 10.9 category bolt, and I have a mini lathe, and I made a new piston with very hard material. I clearanced the shaft on it a little bit smaller than the original OEM where it wasn't mushroom, so it had some thermal expansion room, and I put the AR rings on it. That seemed to fix it. It's running like a champ, as you can see in the videos. I did have an issue also, I think, that was causing some of this with the recoil spring and the guide specifically. They're made just like the HK spec, but so they're not screwed in. The ends aren't screwed in the caps. They're pressed in, or one is pressed in. The other one's part of the this milled out part of from the rod. And looking closely at that, it looked like it was catching on my bolt carrier. Looked like, I don't know if it's the design of it or if this one had an anomaly, but it was catching on the bolt carrier, and I could see it in both instances. When it's trying to unlock and go back, it was catching, and then when it would seat forward, it was catching. So emailed Tommy, showed him pictures of it. He was sending me out a new one. He was sending me out a new piston, a new recoil guide rod, or whole recoil system, spring system, and also a new firing pin key. I'll show a picture of that as well. What I mean is the cam pin, or what HK calls the guide pin. It was starting to deform as well. So while waiting on the one from Tommy, I actually got a SL8 or G36 pin and milled it down to fit. And here you can see it milled down side by side, and then also in the bolt carrier. So again, in the meantime, I made my own recoil guide, recoil system. I use the same spring, but I got a stainless steel tube and pressed in, heated up and pressed in some end pieces to it, and fit it very well. And then I also clearanced the bolt carrier a little bit. So I think there were a couple different things that was kind of causing friction, that was kind of taking some of the power out of the bolt cycling and seating. But in the meantime, while I was getting the new parts from Tommy, he said, "Hey, it sounds like you're over-gassed. It should not be mushrooming that piston." He said he sold those to actual users of MP7s that needed replacement pistons, and they've worked fine. So I did some research, and I couldn't find anything online. Surprisingly, there's not much on the MP7 anyway about the armory of it and working on it. But I couldn't find anything that said anything about the gas block being adjustable. Now, these are HK gas blocks. I saw one reference to it on a forum where somebody was asking about it being adjustable, and something that it completely got off topic. Somebody started giving advice for something else that didn't address that issue, but it was my understanding it wasn't adjustable. Well, Tommy had said, "Hey, back out. It sounds like you're over-gassed. Back out the gas plug a couple turns." And somebody else mentioned on the forum, "Hey, that it makes sense that it's adjustable because there's actually another bolt on top of it that wherever you put the plug, you tighten that other bolt and it holds it in place, so you don't have to tighten down that plug all the way." So what I've done is I went out to the range and I backed it out until it wouldn't hold back on the last round, and then I went in another turn and a half, and it cycled fine, held open on the last bolt, or on the last round, and I went to put the end cap back on, and it was hitting the plug. That's how far out I had it. So I actually turned it in another turn. Now the front piece can go on with no problem, and I ran a whole mag after that, and it's fine. And I did that without the suppressor on, so I did it with and without. First with the suppressor off, and then I put the suppressor on, and it ran fine with the extra back pressure. So I might still be just a little bit over gassed, just because it was working fine at that one point, and I turned it in another turn or two. but it's pretty far out now, and it's still running great. So I'm not speaking to anybody else's issues. I don't know what else other people have run into, but some of the things I found, I know that some others have found as well. And I'll tell you, Tommy immediately he's offered several times, hey, just send me the gun, I'll take care of it, I'll do it in house. I rather do it myself. I like to learn about the gun, and I just don't want to ship it back and forth and have the chance of it getting lost. I've already form one it. So really happy with it. I had some teething pains. I don't hold Tommy responsible. I mean, there were some things that probably could have been done better, like the roll pins and stuff, but the first run of the guns, I'm sure that he'll have all those things addressed on the next run. But I love it. It's great. Very accurate, shoots great, very little recoil with a suppressor on it. It's awesome, and it's just iconic. It goes well with my other HKs, mostly clones, but I really love it. To talk a little bit about my specific setup, so I've got I believe it's the Raid riser on it. Yes, it sits it up high, but I can also use irons underneath it. These are the 416 type, I believe, diopter sights. And then I have EOTech on there, and then I have a Holosun. I forget the exact model number, but it's flashlight, white light, IR illuminator, and IR laser, and visible laser. So it does it all. I really liked. I wanted it all in one, so it's on there. Works great. Nice setup. A couple of the other things I did. So I did put. Oh yeah, one other thing I did was I put in an HK 45C, I believe, magazine release. I wasn't having problems with mine, but I did notice it was starting to wear a little bit because where it holds the magazine is plastic. And I had a little bit of a gap, and when I was trying to figure out what was going on with the failure to eject, I figured, okay, maybe it's magazine height. Anyway, I got that one. I had to bend it a little bit to get it to catch properly and foul it just a little bit, but otherwise it's pretty much identical. And I was able to set it to where the magazine is nice and flush and has a really good contact when it's all the way in, and it releases fine. And most importantly, it's metal. So what I did is after I bent it, I'd file it down a little bit, try a mag, and kept doing that till it would catch and was at the right height. So that worked great. One other thing I found was the bolt hold open lever inside, or catch, was starting to deform and actually bent. It was preventing the bolt from going forward after a range session. Tommy sent me a new one, took care of it, but what I've done since then is I don't use the release to drop the bolt when it's held back. I cycle with the handle just to keep the extra pressure off of that. I don't think it'll have a problem either way, but I'm just doing that as part of practice. I did have also the bolt hold open lever. It wouldn't push down all the way, so it was like, even with when you would push it up to hold it or let it go with the bolt clear, sometimes it would catch the bolt. But so what I did is I just took the left hand lever, the one that's got the spring on it. The hole's kind of oversized, so I just bent the spring down a little bit so it has more tension to hold it down. So now the spring is actually pushing that lever inside down if you don't hold on to it at all. So yeah, otherwise I did put the factory HK backplate and 3-position stock on it. I bided my time and waited till I found one at a decent price. I didn't pay the prices on Gunbroker. I got them at pretty much retail, and it fits great. With the pins were a little bit loose when I got it, even with the HK backplate. But what I ended up doing is I saw that the springs in them were not protruding very much, so I removed the springs and bent them, put a little more pressure on it, and now they hold in fine. It's great. I also compared, so when I got the gun, it came with the stock backplate from Tommybuilt, not the HK one, but the one from the Tommy makes. It came with the pistol backplate, and then also I have a backplate I got that's from one of the Airsoft variants, but it's CNC milled aluminum, and it's really, really good quality. It doesn't quite fit because of the the inside pieces. I think you could probably mill it out if you wanted to. If you like had no other option and couldn't get the HK backplate, it's an option. You can search for it. I think it's Clutch Precision or somebody like that makes it. But it looked really nice. I think if it would fit in there and didn't have those relief issues, it may be better than the HK polymer one. But in any case, HK's working fine. One other thing I did a bunch of reading on how these were actually used, mostly by special operations. And one thing they would do, they put paracord around it so it would never lock forward, because it's pretty stiff as it is. So I just put an O-ring around each of the arms there so it never locks when it goes forward, so it's easier to get back out. And that's worked great. Otherwise, I'm just going to make sure I oil the piston. Oh, and that's another thing, is that's one of the things they talk about in the actual MP7 manual, is oiling the gas piston oiling hole after every 500 rounds. I'm going to do it after every range session. I'll probably clean the gun after every range session, but at the very least I'm going to put oil in it, oil that. Just that seems to be one of the biggest points of replacement parts that are wear items. Yeah, otherwise I love it. Works great now. Knock on wood, until I have another malfunction of some sort, I have full confidence in it now. Yeah, and if you have issues, reach out to Tommy. He's very responsive. I know some guys have had to send things back a couple of times, but I don't know what their specific issues were. But I know he stands by his stuff, and he's a good dude as far as I know. But yeah, otherwise, it's a great range toy. It's not my bump in the night go-to weapon yet, but yeah, I love it. It's fun, it's great, and I don't have any qualms with it now. So if you're lucky enough to get one and you want one, go for it. If you've got issues on yours and you've reached out to Tommy or whatever, or you're interested in some of the specific things I did that's not outlined in these pictures and what I'm talking about here, feel free to just send me a message or whatever. I'll see if I can help you figure out what's going on with it. But I've learned a lot about this gun, and it's pretty simple, so wasn't hard to figure out the areas that you need to look at to make it perform a little bit better. So that's it. Thanks.